So do you want to secure long-term funding for your transitional housing program? Now, in order to do that, you need to prove your impact. So this is part 7 of our 9-part series on systems, tools, and resources to setting up your transitional housing facility. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about exactly how you will collect, track, and report data so that funders and donors can see why your program is worth supporting. So let's jump right in. So as you think about getting data, I want to say that this is why data collection is non-negotiable, because grant funders and the donors, they expect to see hard numbers. They don't want to hear about stories. At the end of the day, I always talk about you want to have really good stories, but stories is not going to get you funded. Stories is not going to seal the deal. What's going to seal the deal is your data, your hard numbers about what you need to accomplish. And that's why having systems in place to capture that data is critical to your success in being able to do that. Now, you'll need to be able to keep track with how many residents you've helped. You're going to have to keep up with what their employment outcomes are. You want to keep up with how they were placed, if they were placed in housing that you solidified for them for permanent housing, keeping track of that. And your success rate, like that is a lot. And guess what? There's more. They could be requiring more of you. You just need to know what your funders are looking for. Those who are giving you funds, what they're looking for, and then you make sure those deliverables meet what they're looking for. Because they're wanting to see a step ladder, like a stepping of you growing, right? They don't want to see you going down. They want to see you going up with what it is that you're doing. So making sure that your data supports what it is that you're building and that you are tracking the things that you should be tracking. That's what you need to focus on. And the stronger your data, then the easier it is for you to get more funding. So clearly do that work. Now, you heard me talk earlier about contract, or we were talking about being the recipient and being the sub-recipient. So if you're brand new, most likely you're just going to be a sub-recipient. Just make sure you know what your funder needs, the person who's subcontracting to you the work, what is it exactly that they need, and you keep track of that. As you keep track of that, that's the stuff you continue giving, and then you make sure you are recognizing your milestones and you're talking about all the great work that you're doing. Because guess what? The more you talk like that, and let's say they need to renew their contract, whose data do you think they're going to use? They're going to use yours. So that's why it's so critical to make sure you know exactly what you're measuring and that you're helping them achieve what they need to achieve, and they're helping you to achieve what you need to achieve. Because you need funding, they need results, and they can get the funding, and that's how you want to piggyback off of what they're already doing. Now, the key metrics that you should be tracking is, of course, the housing stability, how many residents are actually transitioning to permanent housing. Now, as I mentioned, I do something a little different than permanent housing. I do a sustainability program. So depending on what your goals are, you just need to be able to say what it is. If you've maintained simply for them to have stable housing with you, and it's not them moving into something permanent, you can do that too. But just know they may be looking for that permanent data, that permanent result that shows they got into an apartment, they got into another situation that is not your program. So making sure you know how to track that, as well as the employment rates. So how many of your residents actually secured a job or a way in which they made income? Because a job sometimes is hard to find for some people, but some people can start a business that you can make them profitable and now they have income. But being able to track that, you need to be able to do that well. And then have how they participate in your program. You want to know how many people are successfully completing your program. Whatever you set up, they're checking the box and getting it done. You want to be able to track those metrics, and those are basic, and there are some other ones that you may need to consider, but it's your job to know what it is that you're going to track. And by doing that, you are increasing the likelihood of your residents being successful in your programming. That's why having a way in which you automate this is a better way than you manually having to do it. So whether you're going to use Google Docs, or if you're going to go to Microsoft Teams, Google, or any other tracking program, Slack, WhatsApp, you need to figure out what those programs are that you're going to use to be able to track how well they're doing. So let's talk more about that. We want to talk about the tools that we use to collect data and to report out. As I was sort of alluding to, people have Google Docs that be able to capture what it is that you are wanting to do. I would just say I wouldn't say drawback to creating a Google Docs. Those are documents, like how can you prove that the data is the data? That's my question. Now, if you had another system that you're documenting things and over time you see it, that's one thing. But Google Docs or a Google spreadsheet or using an Excel spreadsheet, like, I would challenge the data, because you want to give something that is a proven data source that you can then back up with the results. So if you have something in place that's tracking things, you have other ways to show those are the things that were met. So I would just encourage you, as you are creating Google Docs or a Google document or an Excel spreadsheet, you got the data to back it up. I want to see it someplace else. You should see it in another record that lines up with what your Google spreadsheet says. When you do that well, you're making sure that not only are you tracking your data well and you're doing it in an automated way, but you can pull that data at any time and report on it. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. And once you do that, you can then create impact reports for your funders and your donors, showing them what impact you've made. And that's the thing I do love. You can be able to create a visual that they can look at and say, see, this is what we've done and this is where we are over time. Like, that's what they care about. Most donors and funders, I don't want to say, they're not going to go into the weeds or the details. That's why having an automated system that tracks this, so that whenever you create a beautiful chart, they care about the chart. The data, you just need to back it up. The chart says this, but if they ask you something that's a data point within that chart, you can be able to pull on it from the actual data that you actually collected, and then having a source where it's showing. So that's why I encourage you to have a software program that's going to automatically capture this and detail this for you. And when you can do that successfully, you are going to be able to create the success that these donors and funders are looking for from your residents, which will then increase your ability to bring in more funding for you, the organization you're working for, and maximizing the whole. Remember, this is an emotional thing. So most people take action on the emotional things that they see. So when they can see you growing and building, and not only do you have stories to back up what you're saying, but data that supports it, they can stand alongside that. So you've got these success stories that are alongside the statistics that make an emotional statement and an emotional connection to the work that you're doing. So I encourage you to operate in that space. Now, on this last piece, we're talking about presenting the data to get more funding, because I already sort of alluded to getting more funding. You want to be able to create something that will be able to be tracked and shown and allow you to increase. So how you're going to package that data is going to be powerful for your funding proposal. So funders want to see the real impact that you're making. So they want to see maybe like your before and after comparison. So being able to show something as, this is where we were before, this is where we are today, and being able to show those comparisons between the two. So those are the type of things that they're looking for, is that type of data point that they can then put into their proposals so that they can ask for more funding, and you're going to be the one providing that data to them. You also can utilize that data not just for the funders who are giving you funds, but also donors. I said before, you can get private donations all day long as they're not wanting some type of document that they can turn in for their taxes. If you're not a nonprofit, you can't do that. But if you just simply have people who are on board with what you're building, on board with what you're creating, you can then share that same information with them and leverage that data to attract more people to donate to you. So, and that's powerful, especially if you're in a proposal. So just envision you just create these amazing results for your clients and for the residents that are in your transitional housing program. And you shared that information into a proposal that just got granted more funds. What are you going to do with that? You're going to take that, because I'm sure that you're listed somewhere in there as a partner. You can then take that to a private donor and say, look at the great things that we've done. We just got a grant from this agency that we just got increased funds. Would you be willing to give a donation to? Imagine being able to do that with private donors, with churches, with any partnering with churches to be able to impact others. This is the type of stuff that you're looking for, to be able to tell your story and be able to maximize what you are building. That is the power of having tools to be able to successfully show you how to report out the data that you are doing and the great work that you are doing with the residents at your transitional housing facility. So I hope you enjoyed this part. We only have 2 more parts left after this one, and I'm so excited for the last 2. So stay tuned for the next 2. If you've not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and get the notifications so whenever they hit, you'll be able to see them. And I look forward to seeing you as you transform your life. And so it is.